Okay, today our sermon is on feminism. Everyone says, why are you a feminist, Unicole? Don't you believe in all one? Don't you think that feminists are crazy and mean and don't understand that we're all one? How come when I Google Unicult, one of the main things it's called is feminist? Why is this a feminist cult? Can men be in this feminist cult? We will talk about all that and more in this sermon. I also would invite you to ask questions. I might not get to them, but ask questions if you want about feminism. If you don't feel like I'm answering your question in the chat box, and I'll do my best to answer that question at the end of the sermon. Okay? Unicult views feminism in a particular way that is not necessarily reflected anywhere else. We are very happy to call ourselves feminists. In Unicult, we say we are feminists, obviously, because it seems that important. And I know that that isn't as clear to everyone as it is to me, and that's why we're doing this sermon today. So the idea of the matriarchy versus the patriarchy is where we're going to start, and the idea of what it means to have power and what true power means. When we look at our world and we look at the systematic framework that our world is built on, we can see that we are living in a competition-based reality. We believe that evolution has happened as a result of competition, and competition is ingrained in everything from our mythology about how we got here today, as well as our success in how we climb corporate ladders and become valuable members of our society. The idea of competition means that instinctively creates a power dynamic that is a hierarchy. This is a hierarchical understanding that's a top-down power pyramid. The top-down power pyramid means, we've covered it so many times, but it means that there are very few people at the top with a lot of power and a lot of people at the bottom with very little power. And as you go down the tiers, you get less and less power and more people. In order to understand this, all you have to do is think about government, think about your job. If you have a boss and they have a boss and they have a boss and then there's a CEO, this is a top-down power pyramid. Everything in our world is structured around top-down power pyramids and hierarchies. This is not the only way to live. I'm not going to say it's not beneficial. I do not believe it is healthy. It has been beneficial for us to get to this point. It's been necessary. I don't believe anything happens without a reason. So we can honor and respect the fact that this is where we have been for this many years, and we can honor and respect the fact that it's not serving us anymore, and we are ready to ascend into another way of being. I use the word patriarchy to identify this top-down power pyramid. When we look at the levels of ease with which one person can move through society and become a valued member of society by societal standards, we call that privilege. So if someone has white skin, if someone is good at communicating in a certain way, if someone is thin, if someone is rich, these are forms of privilege that people have that allow them to navigate society with much more ease and less resistance than if you have darker skin, or you're not very good at communicating, or you have, what we call a learning disability, if you see the world in a different way than the standard box of reality. So we all have different levels of privilege within this hierarchical structure where we are rewarded for the ease with which we move through the world. This is the basic framework that we have to understand what we're talking about. We can call it anything. I choose to call it patriarchy because it overlaps really nicely with the understanding of the academic social reality of the patriarchy that has been formulated in academic spaces and online to talk about privilege and to talk about changing the world into a new place. I use this language that is similar, it's the same as, but with a slightly different take to help other people understand what Unicult is about. If we created our entire vocabulary from scratch, it would be very hard to reach people. So understanding that that is what the patriarchy means, understanding that this hierarchy of value makes it very difficult for everyone because everyone is trying to fit into the box at the top of this pyramid, which is a rich, white, old male who has the ability to have a lot of money and move through society with ease. Obviously, this power dynamic is shifting, and we have a lot of different language and memes and understandings that are changing, that have sort of, that are toppling this pyramid and mixing it all up, and everyone's very confused and upset because it's very uncomfortable. Everyone is very confused and upset about all this stuff because it is complicated and it's tied to our identity and it's scary, and we want to, especially for people who are in places of privilege, we don't want to feel evil. We don't want to feel like, you know, we've done anything wrong, and we don't want to feel like we're responsible for the oppression of other people. The truth is that everyone is implicated in the oppression of people, and people who have more privilege need to recognize the fact that this hierarchy exists and that they benefit from it. So that is where that's where we start talking about feminism and the matriarchy. Feminism is the idea that everyone deserves equal rights. Everyone deserves to have the ability to make their life into the same life, no matter what their level of privilege is. Whether they are a man or a woman or black or white or another ethnicity, any person of color. The idea of feminism is that we care for everyone. And I think this is where Unicult kind of diverges and takes it a little bit further, because I don't think that many people think about how much that will change the fundamental nature of the hierarchy that we live in, that we believe to be truth, that we see as inherently true in our reality. We can't just put more people of color into movies and call it a day and say, well, that's good enough, right? If we're talking about true elimination of this hierarchy, if we're talking about true equality, we're talking about the elimination of the hierarchy, which is a huge radical shift, which is what I call the matriarchy. And that's why I say we're shifting from the patriarchy into the matriarchy, and we stand by that as unicultists. What this means is not that women or people of color or people who have been oppressed are suddenly at the top of the hierarchy. That's not what this means. This means that we change the entire structure of the hierarchy to include all people. To create, I don't know if you guys have seen that picture that's like ego versus eco. I'll pull it up. This is what I'm talking about. So ego, this picture, this is the hierarchy, the top-down power pyramid. And when we see this hierarchy, it extends beyond human culture and it goes into the animal kingdom as well. And we actually have a hierarchy of consciousness. And I believe that's what we're doing in society as well. We don't see people as having levels of consciousness that are equal or levels of value. And it's the same with animals. We think, oh, whales and dolphins are pretty, we go by like brain size or intelligence, you know? I talked to a roboticist the other day and he said, I don't think that cockroaches have any level of consciousness whatsoever. And that to me is a terrifying reality, a terrifying representation of this patriarchal system of the top-down power pyramid, where we are so far removed from the fact that we are part of a whole that we don't even recognize the consciousness that's all around us. This picture depiction of eco is what we consider to be the matriarchy. It's this understanding that we are part of a symbiotic whole and that everyone has equal amounts of value. All the bugs, all the animals, all the plants, all the rocks, all the air, all the water, all the stars. Everything has equal amounts of value. And so when we recognize this value structure, and we recognize the importance of shifting this value structure, we understand that we're not just putting the oppressed people at the top of the hierarchy pyramid and saying, oh, now women are going to be the president. Now women are going to, you know, even I know that there's a lot of sometimes scary things that feminists say, like kill all men, or sometimes I've seen Black people say they want to enslave all the white people. And I think that that kind of rhetoric has its place in the sense that it can be very shocking, and it can wake you up to the reality of what's been happening, because the energy of the hierarchy is so deeply ingrained that we often feel justified in it, and we feel very comfortable in our privilege, and we feel very much like that's the way that the world should be. So when something like a feminist says kill all men, and men find that to be very scary, men can use that as an opportunity to feel into that fear and feel into understanding the fact that women are often scared for their lives from men because of this violence that has been perpetuated. Feminism includes everyone. The idea that people are only the oppressed need help is also a misunderstanding that Unicult is here to clear up. And many feminists understand this as well. There are so many branches of feminism, and we just have to try to focus on the fact that we're all one. But when we look at the people who have the most privilege, when we look at this is something that we really try to do in Unicult, is heal evil. When we look at people who have had so much privilege, who have no idea, no understanding of what their position is in society, who are completely removed from the suffering of others, who feel entitled to what they've got because they don't recognize that they got it just merely by being born into a certain family or having a certain color of skin or a certain disposition that fits into the accepted disposition, then those people are actually extremely cut off from their magic. They're extremely cut off from empathy. They've never had to empathize with anyone because they've been in a bubble thinking that everyone in the world is like them because the world reflects a positive benefit to them. So they're lacking empathy. And also, there's a lot of violence that goes on in order to fit into these boxes. So just the idea, if we just look at gender as an example, women are taught to be smaller and quieter and more accommodating and friendlier and nicer and more helpful. And men are taught to be stronger and not cry and be violent if they can't express themselves properly. And there's all these different ways that we're socialized into expected gender roles, expected societal roles in our jobs and in our families, where we have to repress certain aspects of ourselves. And it is very painful and it is very difficult for everyone. So in Unicult, we say we are all one, and we understand that the matriarchy is about healing and being supportive of everyone. And everyone deserves healing, and everyone has to be open-minded to helping heal other people who they otherwise normally wouldn't necessarily validate as conscious beings. So when we talk about shifting from the patriarchy to the matriarchy, we're talking about a radical shift in the entirety of our society. We're talking about eradicating the hierarchical structure and turning it into something which is actually honorable for each person, rather than, I was hanging out with Aurora yesterday, she kept referring to the domestication of the human. And I do see this hierarchy as a form of domestication of the human, in the sense that by imposing this hierarchical thought structure onto society and giving people no alternatives outside of it, people sort of just find their place. And they do what they can to get to the next level, and they get distracted by attempting to climb social ladders in order to be more comfortable within the oppressive system, which is oppressive to everyone. The lowest people in the hierarchy bring everyone down. We cannot rise into our highest way of being until we care for everyone. That includes the people at the bottom, our conception of the bottom. That includes the people of our conception at the top. They might be the most miserable people. They might be the most ignorant. I have spoken to several homeless people who know more than me, who know way more than anybody else I've ever talked to, because they are tapped in. They are spiritually pure. They are not part of this ego world. And they can't make money because they refuse to participate in the hierarchical structure. I've talked to people who are very high up, who are very respected, who have nothing in their heads. They've cut themselves off from their higher selves because they've had to in order to survive at that tier of this oppressive system. It is oppressive to everyone. We have to find compassion and understanding for every single person, and we have to listen to everyone's experience, and to call it feminism versus humanism, for me, just is a way of remembering to include oppressed people. Let's see if we have any questions. We got 2 donations. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Kate. Is AM being, do we need to block people? We should figure out if we can make people mods. Manage moderators. Let's see if we can do this. Who wants to be a mod? Who wants to block people when they're losing it in the chat? You know, we don't block people as a first response. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and send them in now. Love to toxic masculinity. In the USA, female to male sexual assault is more common than all sexual assault was half a century ago. We need to heal it all. I don't think it's a competition. All right, I'll figure out how to make you all mods. You're all promoted to mods. All right. That is the sermon on feminism. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being open-minded to words that have been triggering. How do we reconnect and stay connected with our true selves while participating in the system? Great question, Diva. How do we shift into this matriarchal system? We can cover that briefly. We have to first acknowledge how this hierarchy is working in our own consciousness. We have to see how we have shunned different aspects of our own selves down into this place we call the shadow. Which parts of yourself have you deemed not valuable? Which parts of yourself have you said, well, this isn't allowing me to participate in society. This isn't rewarding for me and my family. This isn't rewarding for me in my, in my job. So I'm going to try to kill it off inside myself. I'm going to quiet it. I'm going to repress it. I'm going to ignore it. Where are you having this hierarchy inside your own consciousness? We always have to heal from as close as we can to our own hearts. When you do the shadow work, when you dig deep and you validate everything you are, and you understand that you've been taught and trained to not validate those things just because they didn't fit into this preconceived expectation of societal understanding, you can start to feel more balanced within yourself. You can start to have that whole self approach where you've got your ego in balance with your higher self, where you've got, your weirdness in balance with your ability to get shit done. Whatever it is inside yourself that you're masculine and you're feminine, all of these ideas, when you learn how to balance that within yourself, you're going to be doing a lot for transforming society. And the question specifically is, how do we stay connected with our true selves while participating in the system? And I think that we're going to see in 2020 a huge potential for us to actually be more authentic in our lives and be rewarded for it. I really believe that the structural framework of the energy of the planet is shifting from 3D to 5D, which is greed-based, fear-based, control-based, into support-based, into true, authentic. And the universe normally operates on benefiting authenticity. The truth prevails. So the universe normally is operating in a way where the more authentic you are to who you really are, the more rewarded you are, because the system is rewarded, and then you're literally tuning into your highest divinity and it's glowing through your body. On this planet, we have a very strange structural framework that's been overlaid on top of society, on top of our consciousness, where we feel like we have to minimize or change ourselves, and we've lost our connection to our internal compass, which is our heart. So we can't necessarily tune into what it means to be our true selves because we've been so far off the path of that. As we learn to tune into our true hearts, we start to build this structural framework back up of the natural way of being supported for who you really are, of being supported for truth, of being supported for authenticity. The more you can be radically true to who you are in your life, the more you will change the world. You can use me as an example. When you see me, I am very free. It's very easy to look at me and say, wow, I think I could change my life in a way if Unicole is doing it. When you feel that energy from me, from being my radical self, that's all I'm doing. I'm being my radical self and I'm making it public. When you are your radical self, you don't even need to make it public. You need to just walk around your daily life and be who you really are. That has a radiant effect on all the people around you, and it shifts reality. With feminism, how do we find a balance between knowing what's important and what to let go? I feel a lot of issues brought by New Age feminists are irrelevant and it makes it hard to care. Yes, cancel culture and everything can be very exhausting. Are you supposed to keep up with everything? J.K. Rowling hates trans people. Do I need to worry about that? Not necessarily. If that's something that brings you joy, if that's something where you feel like you can enter that politicized space and offer peace and understanding and compassion, then please enter it and do your work. If it's something that feels for you like separation, if it is more separation, it is not feminism. If it is more separation, it is not the matriarchy. So tune into it. Say, is this more separation, or can I find compassion for everyone involved in this situation? Knowledge is power. It's good to know what's going on. It's good to have an understanding. And I think the main thing that cancel culture offers us is an insight into oppressed groups. So and this is where it kind of gets weird, is like a lot of times like white people will be like perpetuating cancel culture when no person of color has said anything, and it gets kind of off track. Use the internet, use online discussions, use these things to hear other people's experience, whether it is of a person who is not of your race, whether it is a person who is not of your gender. And it can be very triggering, and I feel very privileged to be in a place of half privilege, half not, to be understood to be femme and to be seen as a woman, and then also to be white. So I know the pain of being oppressed as what I am perceived as a woman. I know the pain of being oppressed as a non-binary person, which is a whole other bag. And I know the privilege of being white and the pain of that privilege. It's very uncomfortable to be privileged in the middle of this time, because you just want to say, I didn't do anything. I'm not wrong. I deserve to still have what I have. Don't take it away. I'm not a bad person. Leave me alone. Stop attacking me. This hurts. So I have a lot of sympathy for people who have even more privilege than me, because it is a very difficult time. And I think sometimes when we have privilege and we hear things from people who are less privileged, we want our egos want to attack and want to say, well, that's not true. That's wrong. That's not how it really is. You don't know. But that's just your own experience. We have to learn how to just listen with an open heart of everyone's experience without attacking them. If you feel angry at something that someone writes, okay, feel it. Ask yourself, why do I feel angry? What is this triggering in me? But to open our minds up to understand what people are going through is really beneficial. If you are in the midst of an insane whirlwind of political nitpicking about what people can and can't do, and it's exhausting to you, tune it out. Step away. That's not all one. That's us versus them. It's more separation. Find compassion for everyone and step away. We just have to acknowledge that not everyone's experience is the same. And that's the thing where cancel culture is really beneficial. Isn't everyone and everything oppressed depending on perspective? Isn't the idea of everyone being oppressed matriarchal because it's something we all share? The matriarchy is mostly focused on bringing everybody up into the highest way of being. Jafar, yes. Or who said that? Golden Coin? Okay. Golden Coin, yes. If you look at Earth from the highest perspective, we are all trapped within this system. We are all oppressed. We are all one, so we are all affected by each other's level of privilege and by each other's level of pain. Yes. As far as the practical nature of untangling this mess and moving into something higher, we have to see this pretend matrix understanding of value and power that we have on this planet, where certain attributes are rewarded societally and certain attributes are diminished. Do you think competition is bad? I think there is a level of healthy competition that isn't rooted in insecurity, that isn't rooted in insecurity. It's not rooted in pain. I think that there can be playful competition. And I think that as long as there is compassion at the root of it, then that is a healthy form of competition. A lot of competition comes from insecurity and needing to prove oneself in a certain way that is valued. And that is an us versus them concept. Do we need punishment in society? No. We need information and education and love. Amazing sermon. Uni bless. Spirit of Uni, we call you to this beautiful chat room to bless every viewer in the past, present, and future. We call everyone to have a beautiful, amazing week. One of the last weeks of 2019 before 2020, before we ascend into the 5-dimensional reality where we can be supported for our true heart's work. I pray that everyone who sees this scope is able to live with their true hearts in every moment and be who they really are. Uni bless.